Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And for this Monday Mini, we're going to go ahead and put this content warning / trigger warning at the top. This is a conversation about suicide, violence against women, harassment, and overall gender violence. Yeah. And this is actually referring to some of the incident that happened in June of 2024. It is August of 2024, just to put a little timestamp here, in which a city council member tried to blame women for an uptick of suicide that was happening in South Korea. And we've talked about it in our K-pop special about the fact that South Korea has one of the highest suicide rates at this point, or at least they did when we were doing that specific episode. You can go back to reference it. And a lot of conversations about women no longer wanting to have children or no longer wanting to get married in South Korea. We talked about the 4B movement, which has been a debate in itself, a back and forth about whether or not South Korean women know or are a part of this, or whether it's just kind of like been inflated by the rest of the world. It's been a back and forth, actually. More women are actually on board with the 4B movement, as in fact, a lot of the women outside of South Korea are like, we want that movement here as well. And you can reference, I believe, a Monday Mini. Is it a Monday Mini? Was it a Monday Mini and a feminist around the world? I think it was, about some of the feminist movements that were happening in South Korea. But with that, yes. So here's a little bit from a Times article that wrote about it. Local media reported Sunday on June 28th, a press release by Seoul City Council member Kim Ki-duk that included data on suicide attempts made at 21 bridges crossing the Han River from 2018 to 2023. Of 4,069 attempts, 2,487 were by men, 1,079 by women, and 503 by those of unknown gender. The report noted that in 2018, 430 people were reported to have attempted suicide on the bridges, including 288 men, 67%, while in 2023, the total attempts rose to 1,035, with 798, or 77%, involving males. The press release quoted Kim suggesting a cause for the trend. Unlike in the past, when patriarchy and the ideology of male supremacy were prevalent, Korea has recently begun to change into a female-centric society, with women outnumbering men by about 5% as of 2023. As the number of women increases, various factors are occurring, including changes in the marriage market due to the shortage of men's labor and an increase in men having difficulty finding marriage partners, as well as changes in the roles of men and women due to women's participation in society. The article continues, the solution, Kim concluded in the press release, was that, quote, in order to overcome the expansion of female-dominated phenomenon, it is necessary to improve gender equality awareness so that men and women can enjoy equal rights and opportunities. Kim told local newspaper Hankyoreh, I wrote this based on my own personal beliefs, inferring the cause of the male suicide rate. The paper also cited experts who refuted Kim's analysis, pointing out that men have long had higher suicide rates than women in Korea and across the world, regardless of the status of gender equality. The latest World Health Organization data shows the global age standardized suicide rate to be more than twice as high for males at 12.6 per 100,000 than for females at 5.4 per 100,000. So there's so much to be said about this. This was just one man's opinion, and it made global news. And there's so many people who came back and was like, whoa. This is not how the rest of South Korea believes. This is not what we think, yada, yada, yada. But in actuality, it may be more on par with that there has been an anti-feminist movement that has happened. We know, and we talked about the fact that the government, the last presidency, I don't know, the current presidency, he ran on an anti-feminist movement and got rid of the all-women's board. Like, he was really adamant that it's all women's fault. When it comes to low birth rate and low marriage status, they've also blamed a lot of women for being a part of the careers, yada, yada, as he kind of already said in that conversation. And he's not the only one. Again, I don't know if the numbers are as high as it seems from the outside, or it's just that they're the loudest, much like the U.S., which could absolutely be it. And I wanted to go a little further into this article, which says They blame women, blaming feminists and reverse discrimination for social ills, including the country's severe demographic decline, is not new in South Korea. Even as the country remains far from female-dominated, South Korea's overall gender equality has actually regressed in recent years, particularly in the realm of women's political empowerment, according to the World Economic Forum's most recent annual Gender Gap Index, in which South Korea ranks 105th of the 146 countries analyzed in 2023, down from the 99th in 2022. So they went down another like 6 in its ranking. And again, not surprising, as that was part of his whole platform in order to be elected. And people were like, yeah, absolutely. And I just also want to read from the BBC because, again, it made headlines. It made world news. And, of course, it came to my attention because it's in my feed, specifically with South Korea. The BBC writes, however, his comments followed a number of unscientific and sometimes bizarre political proposals aimed at tackling some of South Korea's most pressing social issues, including mental illness, gender violence, and the lowest birth rate in the world. Last month, another Seoul counselor in the 60s published a series of articles in the authorities' website encouraging young women to take up gymnastics and practice pelvic floor exercises in order to raise the birth rate. At the same time, a government think tank recommended that girls start school earlier than boys so that classmates would be more attracted to each other by the time they were ready to marry. They have some odd ideas. Unfortunately, I can't ignore the fact that some of the violence against women in South Korea has only increased. There's an article written by KoreaPro.org talking about dating violence. And they wrote, the National Police Agency has reported a sharp increase in dating violence cases from about 49,000 in 2020 to a record high of more than 77,000 in 2023, with more than 19,000 reports so far this year. And this was written in May 2024. However, out of nearly 14,000 alleged perpetrators of dating violence in 2023, only 310 individuals, 2.22%, were arrested specifically for such crimes. The National Police Agency confirmed to Korea Pro. The Korea Women's Hotline has reported that at least 138 women were killed by their husbands or boyfriends in 2023, and additionally, 311 women survived attempted murders. According to the hotline, a woman faces the risk of being killed by her husband or male partner every 19 hours in South Korea. The data reveals that 20% of perpetrators claim the crime was accidental or occurred in the heat of the moment. Other reasons perpetrators cited included demanding divorce or separation, that was 18%, suspecting the victim's relationship with another man, 14%, and feeling ignored, 4%. And the Korea Women's Hotline emphasizes that violence against women within intimate relationships is a continuum of violence and is never truly accidental. So I've seen more and more. I feel like there's a constant rise in things that are happening. These things are not getting questioned. Again, 2.22% have been actually arrested for these crimes. And even more so, the Human Rights Campaign had a little more data about different things, including digital sex crimes. So they wrote this: the government struggled to address digital sex crimes, including widespread posting of pictures of women and girls without their consent. According to a report released in March by the MoGEF, digital sex crimes targeting children increased between 2019 and 2021. In June, the government's Sexual Violence Safety Survey found that 51% of 7,505 women surveyed worried about becoming victims of sexual violence while using public bathrooms or taking taxis alone. And again, there's been a huge conversation and a huge uptick of crimes of like upskirt cameras and photos, and very little has been done about that. In February, South Korea's Ministry of Justice shot down the MoGEF's plans to revise the legal definition of rape to include non-consensual sex. South Korean courts have interpreted the penal code very narrowly, often ruling in favor of the perpetrator when there are mitigating circumstances such as inebriation. So they are so far behind in conversation about sexual violence, domestic violence, all of those, stalking, again, digital sex crimes or any of that. But they really want to blame women for all these other conversations: the low birth rate, the low marriage, the loss of jobs, men's suicide. It's honestly really, really blatant about how no one's really seeing the root of this problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it is really upsetting because it is so many times I feel like, well, why do you think women don't want to have kids? Why do you think women don't want to be with men? Like, what? I can show you all of this data. I can tell you stories. And yet instead you are like, women, why won't you just go along with it?
Why won't you do this? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like they were literally doing a punishment system. Like when the birth rate of like, okay, women, we need you to have less jobs. So what we're going to do is like try to see if we can talk you out of working, or we're going to try to, at the same time, and knowing these families cannot actually sustain without both of them working. The amount of demand and amount of power of corporations in this area, and very little power for the employees, the level of nepotism that could happen within this industry. Again, the amount of stress, like the competition in getting a job has been pretty intense. Like, again, one of the higher causes of suicide is the economics and that type of status. And we've talked about that before. And them not being able to meet these standards. That is the actual conversation, and no one was willing to have it. The amount that you have to pay in having a home does not meet the amount that you're being paid by your employee, which is also in the US as well. But I think it's even significantly more in South Korea with the differentiation. But with that, we talked about the education system before and how much money they have to pay for a kid to get ahead. And because it's so competitive, if you don't have money, these kids will not make it onto the university or make it onto the secondary education. They have to have tutors. They have to have specialized tutors who are seen as gods in some aspects because they have so much control when it comes to helping children educationally move forward. So again, why would you want to put your child through that if you can't afford to give them that opportunity? Such an odd, like, cyclical conversation and like constant pushback that the question is, why would we? Again, and the fact that there's so much stress that to a lot of people, suicide is the answer, which is so upsetting in itself. And giving the blame to a specific gender is an odd next step. Like, it's an odd, like, this is obviously the answer. What?
It feels very incel-like. You're right. It does.
It doesn't make sense. Like, we were doing fine when it was just men doing being the main focus of society. And you're like, no, you weren't. The suicide rate was still high. Like, what?
Yeah. But just that whole idea of like, when men blame women for like their own violence or their own whatever it is, it's often against women. I'm like, no, wait.
Wait, what?
Let's hold up here. This is not correct, but we've seen it has massive implications on society and has led to violence. So it's something we have to talk about and keep an eye on.
Happy Monday, everybody.
Yes. I was just thinking about this today. It's interesting to me how many things we're talking about with cults this month. It wasn't intentional, but cults and incels and things like that. Yeah. So look out for more of that content. But in the meantime, if you have any thoughts about this, any resources, any updates, please write in and let us know. You can email us at StephanieMomStuff@iHeartMedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at MomStuffPodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I Never Told You. We are on YouTube. We have TeePublic Store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production by iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.